Hi everyone, my name's Justin Odisho and welcome back to another Photoshop album art recreation. So this time it's for an album that actually hasn't even come out yet, but today The Weeknd just announced his new album title and cover, and this is it here. And as soon as I saw it, I thought it was a pretty interesting photo and something that I could actually show you guys how to replicate for the most part. I mean, of course, this is a photograph with professional lighting and all that, but it's not too difficult to replicate, and there's a lot of interesting techniques that you could learn from it. So here was another picture he shared from the technique. So it's kind of like almost like a comic book look, the way they have that really strong blue light and then the cutout solid background. So let's create a new document and begin trying to recreate it. So I'll go to File, New, and our hypothetical CD size here will be 1425 by 1425 pixels, which is just the equivalent to 4.75 inches squared. And that'll give us a blank new square to work with. Now I have a couple things open before I even begin. I have a concrete or rough gritty wall texture that I found on pixabay.com, or you could find on any free stock image website. Just search like concrete or wall texture. I have a photograph of myself here that my friend Noe Angelito took at Noe Angelito. Thanks to him. So to begin, what we want to do before we drag anything onto our blank canvas is cut out our object or person or photograph. So in this case, I'm going to grab my quick selection tool, working on add to selection mode, and a large enough brush to be workable with, and I'll just paint in my selection. And the quick selection tool will work for most cases to get a pretty good selection. You'll see that it'll go over in some areas, so then you just want to switch to minus from selection and cover up those areas. And I know that I'm only going to use like shoulder up for this, so I'm not going to worry about filling in all these details. And also, if you press select and mask once you have your rough selection, you can do things like smooth out the overall selection, add a feather, or shift the edge inwards or outwards to clean it up. And also you can grab one of these brushes here, like the refine edge brush, or you can press R on your keyboard and you can paint in certain areas of the selection, and Photoshop will use its refine edge feature to detect what you were trying to do or clean up areas like hair and fine selection areas. So in this case, I think that looks about right. I'm not going to worry about getting too precise, but you can get as precise as you want, and I'll press OK. Now I'm going to right click and layer via copy, and I'll have my cutout object on its own layer. So this is what I'm going to go ahead and drag onto our open canvas. So I'll select my canvas, I'll drag that cutout document, and then I'll select that layer and place it into the canvas. So now I have my cutout on its own layer, and I'm going to just go to Edit, Free Transform to scale it down into about the right size that I want. So let's scale that down. So I'm just trying to keep it somewhat true to the proportions of the original. You can see it goes up pretty high. So now the next thing we want to do is I'll just drag that texture in there so we have it to work with as well, so we don't have to keep going back and forth. So I'll take this, drag that texture layer on there as well. So I'll hide that for now, but we have it to work with. Now looking at the original cover, we see that nice bright reddish pink background. So the first thing we'll do is head over to our background layer and go to Layer, New Fill Layer, Solid Color. And here we're going to select that magenta-ish color, which if you just find somewhere in between that red and pink on your color picker, you can get something that resembles it. So that's the color that I'm going to use, and now we want to place our text. So I'll grab my text tool. Now I'm not sure what the exact font they're using is, but just use a thick and round font. The font that I'm going to use is called Phosphate, and I'll type out you can type out whatever words you want, but we'll just keep it Starboy like the original cover. I'll actually highlight that since you can't see it right now, and I'll make it a golden yellow color. So not too bright of a yellow, something more towards the golden yellow or orangish yellow. And then what I'm going to do is also just go to Edit, Free Transform, and I'll hold Shift and scale this up. Press Enter there, and then you can place it. I like to use the arrow keys on my keyboard to move things 1 pixel at a time. And then also if you double click on the text to highlight it and you select this button right here, which is the character and paragraph panels, or you can go to window and open the character and paragraph panels. In this menu, you can get to some finer adjustments on your font, like the tracking, how close or spaced out it is, and things like the font height, so how squished in it is. And actually, I'm going to squish it down to about 94%, because if you notice, the original font is kind of squished down. So I'll keep it like that, and I think it looks pretty decent. But now there's so much more into the color and the texture and editing that we have to do to get that original look. So now that we have things placed and proportioned how we want, and also our layers in the correct order, so the cutout above the text, above the background, now we can start playing around with our texture and our color. So first, let's get that blue texture that you see on the original photograph, and I'll show you how to do that. So grab your cutout or person's layer and right click and convert it to a smart object. This way we can apply adjustment layers on them and be able to edit them back and forth and stack them. So the first adjustment layer we're going to add is a photo filter. So go to Image, Adjustments, Photo Filter, and what I want you to select is just the solid blue that they have, and uncheck Preserve Luminosity, so make sure it's not checked, and then just turn the density all the way up to 100. And you'll see that gives you that nighttime blue. But there's still some things in the original photo that are missing. So you can see the shadows aren't pure black. So what I'm going to do next is go to Image, Adjustments, Curves. Now in this layer, here's what you want to do. Grab the bottom left corner and drag it up a little bit. And that's going to give you that muted or matte black look. But then you want to add another point real close by and bring it down like so. So it creates a straight line and mutes out some of these colors. And then I like to create a point in the middle and drag it upwards to get some of that contrast like you see in the original photo, and just play around with it so that it looks good for what your photograph initially was. Typically after you add that photo filter, everything gets really dark, so you are going to have to boost up the contrast so you can get some of those highlights back in there. One thing you can do to make it even more true to the original is pull that left line just barely above the second line. But you see how this first line is at output 21 and the next one's at output 20? And what that does is creates that kind of purplish gray, not black look. So press OK when you're happy, and you'll see that you can always double click on either of those and adjust the filter because they're smart filters. Now the next thing you see that's missing is all that good texture and lighting that makes ours look boring and this one look kind of cool. So since we dragged on that concrete wall gritty texture from the internet, what I'll do is I'll actually edit and free transform and scale this down just a tiny bit so it's more workable. And you can do that if your photo is too large for the canvas. And I'll position this in an interesting placement like so. And what I want to do is actually hold Shift Command U to desaturate it, or you can go to Image, Adjustments, Desaturate. And then I want to go to Image, Adjustments, Levels. Now in the Levels slider, you want to squeeze in the 3 sliders so that it brightens up the photo a lot, but it makes the dark parts a lot more dark and harsh. So you see what's going on here when I squeeze them together on this left end of the photo. So I'll press OK at that point, and then I want to set this layer to multiply or darken. So I'm actually going to set it to darken. I think that looks a bit better in my case, and I'll leave it at 36%. Now the next thing I'm going to do is recreate some of these white dots and scratches that you see. So if you go to Layer, New Fill Layer, Solid Color, and just fill it with a solid black color, we can start to create some noise on this layer. So head over to Filter, Noise, Add Noise. Go ahead and just convert it to a smart object. It's going to ask you to do that because it was a fill layer. And on the layer, you want to add about 50% noise, or you can experiment with your own amount. Just keep it uniform and monochromatic and press OK. Now here you want to go to Filter, Blur, Gaussian Blur, and also add about 1% radius pixels of blur. Now go to Image Adjustments, Levels, and just like we did with the texture layer, we're going to squeeze all 3 sliders in until it just hits the end of this peak here. And you can see what that does is it creates that noise, that white noise. It almost looks like stars, and you can use the same technique to do stars, but it creates some white grit and noise. I'll press OK, and then you want to just set this layer onto Lighten. And what you can see is that it adds that white noise to the photo. Now you can go to Layer, Layer Mask, Reveal All to create a layer mask onto this noise layer. And you can grab your paintbrush at a soft round brush and paint black on the layer mask. So paint black as your foreground color onto the layer mask if there's any areas that you don't want the noise to appear at or be a little less present at, so they're a little more scattered. You can repeat this step and create different variations of noise and have them be stronger on the edges or stronger on the sides. So let's do that one more time. So in this case, I repeated the same step and I created another noise layer that looks like this with a little more noise. And you can also try setting it to screen so that it shows up on the pink and yellow a little bit more. And then just go to Layer, Layer Mask. This time I'll do Hide All, and I can actually use white instead of black and just paint in areas where I want there to be more noise like that. So either way works. You can add the dust and dirt, and if you want, you can also grab textures from the internet and do it that way as well. Now as a final step, just to get some of that color and lighting you see in the original, I'm going to go to Layer, New Fill Layer, and select Gradient this time. Now for the gradient, we're going to select the default black and white and select Radial, and then you want to make sure the black is in the middle and the white is outside. So if you need to check reverse, do so. And then you want to turn the scale up so it's just about creeping on the edges with white. Now press OK because you can always adjust this afterwards, but you want to set this to a blending mode of Overlay and lower the opacity till it looks right on your photo. So right around 50% looks good for me, and you can see how that makes some of that pinkish red darker around here and lighter on the edges, just like in the original. So at this point you can continue adding adjustment layers and tweaking it, but that's the basic album art recreation. So I had some fun trying to recreate it. Of course it's not exact, it's not the same exact thing, and a lot of it has to do with photography, but hopefully you guys still learned a few techniques that you could take from this and apply them onto other projects. So if you guys did enjoy this video, definitely check out my playlist on some other album art recreations I've done. I have a few other ones on my channel and more to come. And definitely subscribe to stay tuned for future videos. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.